Most of us are used to coming and going in and out of towns as we please. But that is not true for all people. Some people are being caught in their cities, sometimes in small parts of town, while others live in underground tunnels and secret spaces. This is a list of 5 secret cities and spaces. Enjoy. Number 5. The Edinburgh Vaults. The crumbling grey brick walls of the Edinburgh Vaults make the city a fearsome place. The vaults were completed in 1788. This system of underground caverns was once home to the city's most destitute inhabitants. The vaults are an underground city formed in the 19 arches of the South Bridge. It was a place of claustrophobia, fear and mistrust, as people had to literally live on top of each other, in houses sometimes 14 stories high. The bridge was finished in 1788, and it deemed fitting that the bridge's eldest resident, a well-known and respected judge's wife, would be the first to cross the bridge. The woman, however, died a few days before the big event, and hers would be the first body to cross that bridge. Locals would now think the bridge was cursed, and most of the townsfolk would now refuse to cross the bridge for many years. Space on the South Bridge started to sell at high prices. It was custom to build on bridges. They started constructing houses on the arches and making dark, airless vaults that would originally serve as workshops for the craftsmen that had their shops on the bridge. However, as time passed, the quality of life in these spaces started to deteriorate as the bridge started to leak and the businesses moved away. Now empty, these vaults became the home of the poor. Immigrant Irishmen, Highlanders seeking refuge, and even body snatchers. But even for these people, the lack of heating, the lack of light, fresh air, and the damp circumstances inside the vault rooms became unbearable. They soon discovered the vault was a place to die and not to live. 30 years after they had been built, the vaults were now completely abandoned. Now you can partake in guided tours through the vaults. They are also believed to be one of the most haunted places in the UK, if not the world. Would you go and visit? Number 4. Mercury. Mercury, Nevada is a closed city, constructed by the Atomic Energy Commission. The town is not accessible to the general public. Although Google Maps does have satellite pictures of the city, Street View is not available. The town started out in 1950 as Base Camp Mercury, a military-style base camp to provide basic facilities to the personnel in the Nevada test site. When the full-service post office was built in the mid-1950s, Base Camp Mercury was officially renamed to Mercury, Nevada. The population of the town would grow to over 10,000 in the early 1960s, and the town grew with a school, a bowling alley, shopping facilities, and even a chapel and a full-care health clinic. Every American nuclear device was tested here between 1951 and 1992. Almost 1,000 nuclear experiments have been performed in this city, with almost 100 of them above ground, causing for a lot of radioactive fallout. In 1992, there came an end to this flourishing town, as all but subcritical nuclear testing ended in the Nevada test site to honor the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. Now there is a skeleton crew of scientists and military personnel running limited tests and research. Currently, there are living about 500 people in the town. Number 3. Dixia Cheng. Dixia Cheng, also known as the Underground Great Wall, stretches across 33 square miles of underground catacombs. It was built in the 1970s to serve as a shelter during invasions, bombings, and nuclear attacks. The tunnels have all been dug by hand by Chinese volunteers. These tunnels would have housed thousands of civilians and were able to provide classrooms, hospitals, and recreational amenities such as a barber shop, restaurants, roller skating rinks, and movie theaters. They were also equipped in growing sunless crops such as mushrooms, and some areas were prepared for well drilling. The shelter and its 19 entrances and houses, shops, and businesses were never used. They opened the tunnels up as a tourist attraction in 2000, but it was closed again soon after. Inside the tunnels, you can see portraits of Mao Zedong and fading slogans such as "Dig deep, store grain, don't claim to be an emperor," and "For the people, prepare for the war, prepare for famine." It is unlikely the tunnels will ever open again for public. Do you think they found something? What could be down there? Number 2. Oak Ridge. Oak Ridge was a super-secret city and part of the Manhattan Project, the top-secret American, British, and Canadian operation behind the development of the atomic bomb. The 75,000 residents of the city had no idea they were working on the bomb dropped in Hiroshima in 1945. Men and women were lured to Oak Ridge under the pretense they were going to work on incredibly important projects that would ultimately end the war. And so the nuclear attacks did. From the pictures, Oak Ridge looks like a seemingly noble, suburban American town. The city was 56,000 acres of land in Tennessee, west of Knoxville. Despite being partially open to the public, the whole city was fenced and guarded. Everybody was checked and there were vehicle inspection stops. No exceptions were made. Even the highest-ranking military officials were searched. Secrecy was one of the top priorities of the town, and if you would be asking too many questions, the military would pay you a visit, after which you would not be seen anymore, or be asked to leave within the hour. Workers also weren't allowed to use certain words, such as helium, and were not supposed to use the names of the instruments they were working with. One girl that lived in the city testified, "I worked in the laundry at a Monsanto chemical company. I had to count uniforms. They were first washed, then ironed, and I would hold a special instrument at the uniforms. If it made a clicking sound, I would have to throw it back and do it all again." One notable theory amongst workers was that Oak Ridge was a prototype communist community as part of Eleanor Roosevelt's plan to turn America communist. Put people to work in a factory, tell them not to ask questions, throw in a few propaganda billboards around the place, and you start to see why these theories arose. What do you think? Was this a communist community, or just a top secret town? Number 1. Ozersk. Ozersk is a closed town in Russia. It is a population of 82,000, and they are being watched and guarded 24/7 by guards on barbed wire fences and CCTV. Ozersk is considered the birthplace of the Soviet nuclear weapons program after the Second World War had ended. For a long time, you were not able to find the city of Ozersk on maps, while the identities of its people were erased from the Soviet census. The people living there simply just did not exist. Although the city might look like a perfect suburban town, nothing is less true. The lakes are contaminated, the fruits are poisoned, and people are very sick. It is one of the most contaminated places on Earth, which gives it the nickname Graveyard of the Earth. Most people, however, do not want to leave. They believe they are Russia's chosen ones, and they take pride in being citizens of this poisonous city. The Soviets began constructing City 40, as it was called a long time, close to the nuclear plant of Mayak. The town would house workers and scientists to lead and work in the nuclear weapons program. Goal? Build an atomic bomb. Residents would be locked up in the city. It was forbidden for them to leave the city or even to make contact with anyone outside the fence, even their own family. Most people relocated to the city had been flagged missing by their families, as they had disappeared from one day on the other, willingly or unwillingly. Everyone was given an apartment, plenty of food and good education, while the rest of the country was starving. People were happy, and it was incredibly prestigious to live in Ozersk. But there are no such things as fairy tales. The government lied about the effects of extreme exposure to radiation, and people started to get sick and die. The government also started dumping waste into nearby lakes and rivers, which flow into the river Ob and ultimately into the Atlantic Ocean. It is said that they disposed of more than 200 million curies of radioactive waste in that manner. That is equal to no less than 4 Chernobyls. People now living in Ozersk are being exposed to 5 times as much radiation as those living in the areas of Ukraine affected by the Chernobyl nuclear accident. But still, people do not want to leave, even though they can, given they will never be able to return. Even more so, the people of Ozersk believe the fence around the city does not function to keep them in, but to keep outsiders from entering their paradise. What do you think? Would you live there? Next week, we are going to have a look at the top 5 most scary diseases still out there. Hope to see you then. Don't forget to subscribe and stay safe.